All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is our live episode of Blue Dream Radio, and we're doing things a little differently. What we're doing is we're doing this Facebook/ Zoom live event, and we wanted to talk about cannabis and cannabis being essential now in this time of COVID-19. And we have some pretty amazing guests here with us today. My name is Ali G. For those of you who don't know me, I'm super excited to be moderating our panel for today. And we have some pretty awesome sponsors who are supporting us in our work. So we have folks like Fast Money Farms, ACBD Remedy, Supreme Green Cuisine, let's see. I think that's Pops NYC. My bad, Pops. Sending you lots of love and props. Um, and so we're here today to start talking about cannabis and the importance of cannabis here in the United States, also globally, but how cannabis has been really at the crux, at the intersection of so many different social justice or social injustices here in this country. And we've compiled a group of panelists, our experts, if you will, who are going to be joining us and talking a little bit more about just what cannabis is and how cannabis has impacted everyone's life, whether folks realize it or not. So on our panel, we have the amazing Michelle Fields. Say hi, Michelle.
Hello, everyone.
We have, I'm looking at from the order in which I see, we have the brilliant Audrey Funk. Let me take you off. Let's see. Sí me dejan. A ver. All right. We have the relentless freaking guerrera Pilar de Jesus.
Hey,
Awesome.
what's up, Pilar?
And then we have the always brilliant Rebelin Vargas.
Hello.
Awesome. So we have a really exciting panel that we want to get started with. But before I do that, I just wanted to kind of set the stage for just the context and give some context behind why we're here today. So we're here today because cannabis is essential. And I think most of us, if not all of us here, recognize that. Cannabis is super essential simply because it's been a part of our lives as people of color, not only for the past few decades, but frankly for centuries. Cannabis is in fact been proven that it's actually been woven into just the daily functions of our lives, whether it be through cannabis, the plant that folks smoke for their own health and wellness, or whether it's through its cousin hemp that's been used as a form of fabric. Some people say that it was used to write the Declaration of Independence. So it's been a huge part of the history of our country, of the United States, and also throughout the world. In New York State, and that's where we're going to be focusing a lot of our energies on today. There is one bill that is of extreme importance to us, and it's called the MRTA, or the Marijuana Reform and Taxation Act. And we'll speak a little bit more about it, but it really has four major pillars, or main pillars. I shouldn't say only four, but there are main pillars that are really kind of set the foundation for this bill and what makes this bill so important in comparison to bills that have passed, state bills that have passed in California or Colorado, Oregon, or Washington State. And actually the foundation of that bill, of the MRTA, is actually seen in the bill that was passed in Illinois last year. So some of those foundations are around racial equity, just equity, period, cannabis equity, which again, we'll talk more further about later on, community reinvestment, which is huge, especially as we talk about the impacts of cannabis and marijuana on communities of color in this country. and just a the health program. So how publicly how the medicinal use of cannabis would be impacting our folks in the community. Moreover, um, as we talk a little bit more about it, we have to also be clear that the reason why cannabis was, or marijuana, ganja, whatever you want to call it, was initially made illegal. It was made illegal in 1937 through the marijuana. I have it right here, Marijuana Tax Act, and to note that marijuana was actually spelled with an H, not with a J, and it was done purposely in order to really put a target on the people who they wanted to really focus in terms of the people who are who have been up, who they felt that needed to be targeted. And it's very, very similar to what's going on today in terms of the administration in Washington, D.C. putting a target on certain people and used to scapegoat them. So in the 1930s, the then kind of drug czar ahead of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics before the DEA was established was a gentleman named, or a real piece of shit, excuse my language, Henry Aslinger, who really was focused in on just oppressing people. And he's actually was known as a known racist and classist. And he specifically targeted people of color and Black people in the United States, people like Billie Holiday and Louis Armstrong, specifically because of their open cannabis usage and because of their ability to really cause an impression. And they had a following. People really believed in the work they were doing and their music. Billie Holiday is best known for some of her Strange Fruit, for one of her songs that really got her into a lot of trouble and will put the target on her back. And it's known that really Henry Aslinger really went out of his way to find her and to oppress her, and essentially then to kill her thereafter. Um, so the law was passed specifically to oppress and systemically harass people of color. And then once the law was then passed, then we think about fast forwarding to today, where hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people of color have gone through the prison industrial complex, have been incarcerated. They and their families have been targeted, and communities have been devastated. I'm sure most of us here on this in this space can talk to an experience that they have had, or their family members have had, or someone close to them have had being incarcerated, and how devastating it is to your family, both financially, emotionally, psychologically, and then that goes back further into generational trauma. So now we're here where we have the ability to change the law state by state until the federal government creates a law, and we don't want to be half-assed about it. We want to be really intentional about what we do, and make sure that of all the years, of all the decades our folks have been oppressed through this really, really terrible legislation, these terrible laws, that they finally get it right. That we don't let someone else make decisions on our behalf, but instead that we are the ones who are out there fighting and ensuring that the legislation that is passed is going to benefit our communities, the people who have been most negatively impacted by the war on drugs. And guess what? The same people who fought against this are the same people who are poised to make lots and lots of money and want to keep us out. And so that's why we're here. We're here to be able to talk about this a little bit further. Like I mentioned, since we had some new folks come on, my name is Ellie G. I'm the co-host of Blue Dream Radio, a podcast, the People's Cannabis Podcast. We drop our new episodes every Saturday at 4:20 p.m. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you find your podcasts. I am a community organizer by trade. I've been doing community organizing work for 15 years in New York, in Connecticut, throughout the country, and in Puerto Rico. And cannabis is a part of my life. Although a I am a cannabis supporter. I do not consume cannabis, but I definitely have seen how in my own life, cannabis has been used for medicinal purposes. My own father, who no longer is with us, but in the latter part of his life, had severe liver disease. And the only thing that got him up and out and actually functioning was being able to consume cannabis. It gave him an actual appetite and allowed him to eat and function amidst this really, really terrible disease that he was fighting against. So a little bit about me, and we're going to jump into it. So we're going to start off with Michelle Fields, who I wanted to talk a little bit about who she is and why she is an expert. We're going to give her a minute to talk about that, and then we're going to just dive into her area of expertise. Michelle, before I unmute you, Michelle is super humble, as are all of our panelists. So if I have to interrupt them and big them up with all of their amazing qualifications, I will do so. But yeah, Michelle is an attorney, and she is just freaking amazing. Yes. So Michelle, go right ahead, and I'll yield the space to you.
Happy Friday to everyone. Happy Friday to all of my ladies on the panel. Wow. So, like Liz, I'm not a professional connoisseur. I'm kind of geeky. I'm kind of curious. I like the science and the business behind this market, the legal business of cannabis. I write a lot for a local newspaper here in Queens on not only regulatory compliance, but on, state, emerging legislation such as the more federal as well as state, such as the more the MRTA and the CRTA. Just bringing the information to our people and really, simplifying it so that people can understand what these new bills look like in regards to the legal business of cannabis. And so that's where I'm at. And I'm just happy to be here today, to be a part of the panel and to share, my expertise.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you talk about the Mary Jane Consulting Group?
Well, the Mary Jane Consulting Group, we do a lot of consulting in regards to global compliance and how to keep emerging companies compliant. What are the regs in different states? How do you now form your cannabis corporation? What other disclosure requirements in regards to this industry, which is an industry that requires a lot of transparency? What is regulatory ownership? How does that look? How do you now formulate SORs for your particular company in the different jurisdictions? What is the market analysis for your particular jurisdiction in regards to not only medicinal, but recreational retail on a state level as well as a global level? And also just providing just basic information for those that are looking to enter into the ancillary, opportunities of this industry, and just bringing about clarification in regards to what can I do, what are the laws, what is the, Controlled Substance Act, how do I operate within those guidelines, and what are the regs in the different states, not only in New York, but California, Colorado, and the other legal states as well.
Awesome. So Michelle, talk to us a little bit about cannabis legalization. So cannabis businesses, like I said, are poised to make a lot of money. However, cannabis businesses are much more than just dispensaries. I think that's the one thing that people always think about. I'm going to open up a cannabis business. I'm going to open up a dispensary, but it's much more than that. So can you talk about business in cannabis, the legacy market, AKA our street pharmacists, ancillary businesses, and what are multi-state operators?
Well, your multi-state operators, we have, in particular here in New York, we have 10. Those are registered medicinal dispensaries, registered with organizations, registered with the state of New York. Now, in regards to the coronavirus, all 10 of those registered organizations in the state of New York are now considered essential businesses. Not only are they considered essential businesses here in New York State, but as you go down the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, all of the medicinal and medical dispensaries are now considered essential businesses. So they will stay open. They will not close down. However, in Massachusetts, the medical dispensaries are the only ones that are deemed essential businesses. The recreational dispensaries have to close down.
Mhm.
Even when you are considered a essential business in regards to the ROs, you still have certain protocols that you have to follow. You have to establish protocols to protect not only your employees, but your clients as well. And you have to put in those protocols in regards to social distances, social distances. You have to, really be compliant with PMP, and really make sure
What's
that
PMP, Michelle?
the PMP is actually the prescription requirement, and in making sure that everyone has their valid medical marijuana card. Um, and once you have verified that marijuana, the PMP as well as a valid ID, you also have to allow one, your dispensary can do door sales and they can also do deliveries, but you have to be registered to do deliveries, even with your registered organizations. So what's happening here in New York State is that you have 10 ROs, but the delivery component, they don't have the critical capacity because you have over 100,000 patients. So how are you going to serve all of those patients if you don't have that transportation ability to make deliveries?
Absolutely. So talk to us about legalization and the legacy market, the black market. How does legalization impact, our folks on the streets, frankly?
It really doesn't. The legacy market is always going to be robust. It's always going to be sustainable, because you have the locality factor, you have the authenticity factor. People know their product. People are familiar with the legacy market and those players, and you have a price point that is not as high on the regulatory market.
And then I guess talk to us from a legal perspective. How does cannabis legalization fit into a system which continues to criminalize folks for cannabis?
Can you ask that again?
So, from a legal perspective, how does cannabis legalization fit into the system which continues to criminalize cannabis? So, like for example, in New York State, medicinal cannabis users only have access to certain types of cannabis, but not, for example, flower, not the actual, weed, for lack of a better term. How does that fit into cannabis legalization? Why is it important that the system itself just catch up to the changes in technology as it relates to cannabis, and how does legalization impact all of that as well?
Well, the need for legalization is important because number one, you will now stop criminalizing already criminalized communities for possession. That's number one. Number two, in New York City, you have the decriminalization marijuana bill, which allows you to have possess up to 2 ounces without it being a crime, and now becomes a violation. However, even with the decriminalization, you still have those Black and Latinos in those criminalized communities being arrested. Even once the decriminalization marijuana bill was passed here, you had an uptick in arrests in the Stapleton area of Staten Island, South Jamaica, Brownsville, East New York. You still are having those arrests. So that has not changed at all. That's number two. Number three, when it comes to total legalization, you're not only going to have it on the state level, but you need it on a federal level too. On the federal level, you're going to allow those that have federal convictions. You're going to allow those to have those convictions, expunged. Right now, you can't have any federal expungements. On the state level, you can have expungement, especially if you live in New York State. You can have a state expungement or state sealing if you have a possession of marijuana. And that's the beauty of, on a state level, on a federal level, you're gonna need total descheduling as well as decriminalization.
And then how for businesses, why is it important for descheduling? For, let's say, for example, for like banking purposes.
Well, banking is federal. Banking is federal. That's where you get into whether or not you can have, you know, loans from a bank, SBA loans, where you can do deposits. Right now, there is no banking, opportunities for the cannabis, industry because it's all federal. That's number one. Number two, once it is the schedule, a lot of the cannabis organizations do not run a risk of running afoul of the Controlled Substance Act because now it's taken off of a Schedule 1. It's no longer under the SCA. So you no longer will run the risk of, running afoul of this SCA, money laundering. You no longer will run afoul of, not only money laundering, but the looping laws, transportation laws. So it needs to be totally descheduled and
Are,
taken off.
are any of those multi-state operators or are people, period, are they being impacted right now? Are they taking some of these corporations to court based on on federal laws?
There's a lot of SEC investigations due to overvaluation of stock. In regards to a lot of these huge cannabis corporations. So you're having a lot more SEC investigations. You're seeing a lot more pyramid schemes, especially out west. You're seeing a lot of, these major cannabis corporations. They're closing down. They're laying off people, and investors are filing these complaints, and now you have a lot more SEC investigations.
And then talk to us. You mentioned something about ancillary businesses. What is that, and how does that relate to the cannabis industry?
Well, ancillary business, a lot of people know it as not touching a plant, but not touching a plant doesn't mean that you're not still under the guidance of the CSA. Because you're going to still have that connection, whether you are doing trademarks, whether you're doing transportation, whether you're doing security work for a cannabis company or transporting, money to a designated area, whether you're a bud tender, whether you are a consumption lounge, you still have, that CSA to consider, but the ancillary just gives you more opportunity to not, have direct contact with the plant. And it also, with the ancillary opportunities, your startup costs are not as much. It's, your segue into that industry is a lot more. You have a lower cost in regards to investment costs.
For sure. So, like, for example, and I didn't mention them up front, but like Presto Doctor, who's also sponsoring um, this roundtable. Presto Doctor, their CFO Rob Tankson had given a great idea of an ancillary business that's very necessary to the cannabis industry, which is web development. So, lots of dispensaries need someone to, frankly, just make them go online and have them have like websites and stuff. And that's a great ancillary business where you're not actually touching the plant, as you say, but it gives them the ability to also be a part of this industry and support the actual industry, to support the folks who are actually distributing.
And also now, because everyone is going virtual, you have non-traditional marketing methods in this industry. Those influencers, those IG influencers are going to be, an ancillary business if they are now able to do marketing for a lot of, products, cannabis products, whether it be, you know, recess, whether it be for pins and, you know, whether it be for a company like Comeback Daily, you now have the potential to use these, you know, influencers to really market your products, your business, and because everyone now is virtual. Everyone now is going virtual. So how do you now continue to reach your market, your customers? Now it's going to be about those influencers who's going to be able to drive, you know, a presence and drive, you know, have some traction to come to their page and now are able to market your business for you.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add, Michelle?
I think this is a great opportunity for us to really, as you know, people of color, to really take advantage of this time to think about our position, our visibility in this industry. How can we utilize our cultural, you know, norms? For instance, susus and, you know,
Yeah.
and what's the other one? Partners to finance certain, you know, cannabis, you know, businesses, and not so reliant on a loan from a bank or an investors. Let's utilize the power and the money that we have in our communities already. Let's start collaborating. Let's start, you know, talking to our family members, our friends, and say, let's collaborate. Let's go into this. Let's co-op these micro businesses together. And I think that's where we need to start.
Great. Thank you. And that's a perfect segue to Raybelin, our queen of cooperatives. Thank you, Michelle. So Raybelin, talk to us about worker cooperatives and how they fit into the cannabis space. Wait, put yourself on mute still. Let me unmute you.
Okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit because I want to first really talk about why I'm involved in this cannabis industry, in this legalization effort. And I want to first not call it cannabis, I want to call it marijuana, because I don't want to continue to use the corporate terms to try to distance themselves and act as though that what has happened in the past few decades against our people is something that's gonna, like, it's not gonna continue. So that's why we, you know, the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act is part of a campaign that I've been working on the past year, is to really be involved in the social civil rights aspect of it, about how the country all throughout the United States, you know, marijuana is being legalized and white people are the ones making money while our bodies are sitting in prison for that. And MRTA was formed, this coalition that's spearheaded by Drug Policy Alliance, and it's called Start Smart New York, which is about 40 statewide organizations all throughout New York State. We've been working really hard to really hold on to the fact that this is a social civil rights issue for our people, and we need economic justice. And when we're talking about our people that have records, that have been disenfranchised, that have, because of the arrests that we have had, the felony convictions for the past 40, at least in my generation, every single man my age that grew up in the 80s, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, they all have a charge. So guess what? They didn't get to go to school. They're not able to have a regular job. They're not collecting any pension. A lot of them are still living with their mothers because they cannot get an apartment because of these charges. They have been totally pushed out of the market and are not able to enter into any type of business or get their own enterprises going, no matter what, because of these marijuana convictions. And so when I joined the coalition last year, we were, you know, the challenge was, is that what is the framework in which our people, with our records and our lack of access to capital, our lack of training, all the lacks that you need to start a business. Well, you know, I was asked to join the coalition and lead the cooperative effort, because in New York City in 2014, there was an initiative called the Worker Cooperative Business Development Initiative that formed independently of marijuana legalization to address the fact that we went through an incredible recession where Black and brown people all throughout New York City were not able to get any type of job. And so a group of activists went to the city council and said, let us start our own co-ops here in New York City, and let us find our own solution about how to lift our communities out of poverty. And since that time, since 2014 to the year 2020, in less than 6 years, New York City now has the largest worker-owned cooperative companies being formed in the entire United States. And our largest worker-owned cooperative is based in the Bronx, and it's made of home care workers, where they have 2,000 worker owners, where they get the state contract to provide home care services, and they pay themselves their fair wage, and they create their own pension. They have their own, they do their own training. It is one of the most successful worker-owned businesses that in the world, because it's also one of the largest worker-owned businesses in the world. And so when it came to co-ops and marijuana legalization, it was just a natural fit. This is how we can really talk about economic justice in our community, not only to repair the harms and decriminalize all the abuses, and also to address the fact that our Black and brown bodies are the ones that are going into prison, even though white people, if not use it as much, if not more, but they're not the ones going into prison and getting the stigma and getting the violation and losing their future and opportunities because of the charges that they carry on forever. When we talk about why this was a viable instrument, this framework, is because we have in the past 6 years in New York City, we've been able to prove to the city controller and to the city, and our movement has been growing little by little. We have now co-ops. There's one co-op that has already made $1 million. We have a few, and these are immigrant people who taught themselves the skills and upskilled themselves and learned their industry, and they learned their expertise, and they paid themselves the wages. And so these are the type of models that we want to use in this legalization effort, so that our legacy market can now enter and become official. They don't have to hide undercover. They don't have to no longer be on the street. They should open up their own storefront and not have like people standing on the corner passing out bags when they can just pretty much also sell on the street. And so one of the things that we really fought on very specifically about MRTA, which is different than what the Governor Cuomo has proposed. And I really want to make this very important statement, because it did not pass this year, did not pass last year. And a lot is because, Governor Cuomo promised that it was gonna pass this year. But the bottom line is that Governor Cuomo's Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act had absolutely no provisions for our communities, did not do anything to repair the harms that marijuana criminalization has caused into our community, and there was absolutely zero support, because the MRTA, sponsored by State Senator Elizabeth Kruger and Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes, which includes very strong core values for racial and economic justice, and reforming the criminal justice system so that when marijuana gets decriminalized, we will have automatic expungement, that there's going to be resources to work with attorneys for immigrants who should have their records erased but not challenge the immigration status towards the pathways to citizenship or the pathways to residency. It has also a very strong component for community reinvestment, because when I live in Washington Heights, and I live on the block where Mayor Giuliani created the first model block. When it was overly policed, we were getting arrested left and right, and the collateral damage that these over-policing tactics have done in the communities, of over-criminalizing the communities, underfunding all our programs, overcrowded schools, no textbooks, etc., has done generational harm to our communities. And the MRTA has a strong provision for community reinvestment that definitely at least 50% of all revenue should go back into the community for education, for rehab, for reentry, for a whole range of services. And there was no way that we in the coalition were going to have cannabis legalization happen now on the way Cuomo has his program proposed. And so for us in the cooperative movement, we're ready. In New York City, we're ready we're Green Worker Cooperatives, where I'm the advocacy coordinator. We're already starting to talk to, we're inviting people, if you have a dream and a team, come to an info session and talk about how you want to get involved in the marijuana business. And like what Michelle was talking about, there are over 65 different types of jobs, businesses that you can start, that you don't even have to touch the plant and don't require a license, but can be part of the new market that is eventually going to come down in New York City. And what we're also calling for in the MRTA, and I'm so glad that you talked about the delivery. We are also trying to say that for the first 2 years of legalization, that the delivery licenses should only be for the people most impacted by marijuana arrests.
Right.
And so those communities are like, the top 10 are Brownsville, East New York, Washington Heights, Harlem, Sunset Park, and you can just imagine all the rest. And these are the communities that we want to have first dibs on certain licenses, and that's what MRTA is fighting for. And also, but because of the capital that you're gonna need to get the license, we ask in the cooperative model is that we will get from the government technical support, technical training, low interest or zero interest loans. And one of the benefits about here in New York City that what we have is we have a loan fund partner called the Working World that only lends to co-ops. So we already have a built-in mechanism in where we can borrow money to launch our business. We here in New York City, I cannot speak to New York State, but in New York City, we're ready to launch MJ co-ops all over in every single aspect of the whole aspect of the industry, whether it's plant touching, another registered organization, whether it's just to be a delivery service, just a website company, be a bookkeeper, be a marketer. It doesn't really matter, but we are ready to support you, train you. Green Worker has a 5-month program where we train you and school you up about how to plan your business, launch your business, think about your business. And by the time you do 5 months of this intensive, kick your ass, training boot camp, and not only do you come out fully understanding all the responsibility of what it takes to build the business, but we also have a coalition of wraparound services. We have lawyers to provide you with incorporation and continuing guidance. We also have bookkeepers that will help you set up your books. And we also have some spaces have incubation spaces where you can get a desk from that's subsidized by the city. So it's like once you join the cooperative movement, we provide holistic services all throughout. So you're never alone in this process. You will always have continuing education and technical assistance. We always work together to make sure that the latest information is available to you, because I had another business before I was a cooperator. I used to have my own pizza shop, and I had to close it because I was all by myself. I had nobody. I mean, I kept going through SCORE and Small Business Administration and the Pace University and WeBo. I did all those programs, but I was still alone, and I was it was not adaptive programming where I started and went through all the paces in an adaptive, accumulative way that I needed to learn so I could grow my business. It was a lot of one-offs, and because I was so young, I took things I took a lot of classes in the wrong way, so I was not able to properly apply the information I was learning. When you join, at least in New York City, the cooperative movement, there's a lot of, we're still learning, it's a new movement, but the commitment is to continue to grow our businesses together in whatever type of company you want to launch as a co-op. And I want to specifically address that there are many different types of co-op. We focus on the worker owner cooperative. There are producer co-ops, consumer co-ops. They are like consumer co-ops is like Park Slope Food Co-op, like the people who are buy in Park Slope Food Co-op are the cooperators, but they don't, and they volunteer to work it, but they only form so that they can buy things together. Worker owners, the employees own the business, and it's one member, one vote, and it's a democratic process about all the major decisions that have to be done by the company. And so it is still a business, but it's a business that focuses on workplace democracy, on dignity, on paying yourself a fair wage, planning your future together, and also reinvesting back into the community.
Sure. That
So
sounds awesome. Thank you, Rabel. And I have a question since I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. 1 minute introduction. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Obviously, you are you are our expert on cooperatives, but talk to us about you and how you got.
So I guess there's a lot of, okay, I would say for me, the only way to really describe how I see myself in relationship to no matter where I am and what job I hold in whatever title I hold in, I am the problem solver. So I have been organizing in New York City. I am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and I come from a huge family, and I was the first person to learn English. And when you're the first person to learn English, guess what happens in that community? Hey, I was already trained to be an organizer since I was 6. Yeah. So I've been on the phone dealing with systemic oppression since I was 6 years old, not even understanding words I did not know how to pronounce, but I had to represent my family in that way. But in that life experience, I have worked through a whole range of issues on prison industrial complex, immigration reform. I am the president of my tenants association, where we just won a major landmark case against a slum named Alma. Look it up, GVS v. Vargas. People should, like, if your building doesn't have a current certificate of occupancy, you don't have to pay rent. Anyway, that's just one of my.
We're gonna talk about that further too.
No, that's the work that I do. I work to solve problems in my community in every space that I occupy.
Awesome, thank you, Raeblin. All right, so let me move on. So Pilar, let me unmute you. So much that we can talk about, but I really want you to, first of all, introduce yourself, and then we'll go into some questions.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I'm Pilar de Jesus. I'm born and raised in East Harlem, Mexican, Puerto Rican community activist. I'm also, by day, I am an advocacy coordinator in the tenant unit with the Take Root Justice, formerly known as Community Development Project. I am a board member of NYC Normal. I am a board member of East Harlem Preservation. I am the state coordinator for National Expungement Week. I am a co-founder of one of the marijuana worker cooperatives that came out of Green Workers Academy. I'm an aunt, but that's like my favorite role out of all of them, being an aunt. A lot of my friends call me a superhero. I'm also very fearless. I'm an Aries, so I'm a fire sign. I'm a leader. I'm very passionate. Some people say I'm too passionate and have given me the nickname Pilar la Problema, and I embrace that with a whole bunch of love, because I do bring the problems. Like, if you're not doing shit right, then I'm going to hold you accountable for that. And it all comes from a place of love. And I think that's where sometimes my passion, as people like to pretty much downplay them saying I'm aggressive, is all from love. I'm a lovable person, and I'm just tired of my people getting fucked.
Indeed. And I mean, we could.
And I'm also a victim of the war on drugs.
Oh, I feel like if we could all raise our hands.
About how many days on Rikers, so we can talk about that another time. But I can been homeless for a few days. I've been there. I've been targeted in many ways when it comes to being a Latina.
For sure. So, you are obviously a very well-known cannabis activist, or a marijuana, ganja, take your pick. April 1st came around, and lots of cannabis advocates were really happy that the MRTA, or that legalization, did not pass in New York State. So can you talk to us about why that's the case, and why New Yorkers should feel happy that now they have to wait until 2021 to look towards recreational marijuana being legalized in New York State?
So in my opinion, I was one of those people who was very happy. That's a marijuana cough, not a corona cough. I was one of those people who was happy because I am part of also the Start Smart Coalition that Rayblen sits on, and a few of others of us sit on. And, we had worked really hard to, create this perfect bill, the MRTA. And we knew that the governor did not put that in his budget. He put the Cuomo version of it, which is the Cuomo bill, which was terrible. And so we knew then, because of this pandemic that was happening, we couldn't be there as activists, as lobbyists in support of legalization, to be there to really explain why it was important for many of the reasons that Rayblen mentioned when it comes to the co-ops, and the stuff that Michelle mentioned when it comes to criminalization and all those things. And so it's different when you're not in front of them, and then they're also dealing with this big crisis. And it didn't make any sense to me that, unlike other states like Chicago stopped business. Like, it didn't go to, let's get back to normal and go on with these laws that were going to screw us. And that's something that people need to really pay attention. Our government has a history of passing laws, especially harmful laws that will harm us, during a time of crisis or during a time of like celebration. So like Christmas, New Year's, Obama passed the National Defense Act, however the acronym NDAA, around New Year's Eve, so all the bills get passed during crisis and bad moments. And so, bail reform, it was going to got rolled back. And so the bills that were going to be passed, which Carter was going to be passed, was bad. It was bad for us. Another thing is that, the coalition has worked really hard. And I know Rayblen mentioned that the numbers that we were looking, those were like some of the numbers that, 50% for community reinvestment. But for this year, we really wanted to try to really see what those numbers look like in each of those communities, the communities that have been directly affected by marijuana prohibition. And each community had a different need. Each community, each community board was asking for this. The one thing that every community board was aligned with in the most harmed communities was that housing was a need. They put affordable, and another thing about this politics, they use words to trick us. And so, affordable housing is needed. No, low income housing is needed. That was like across the board. But there were other areas that didn't match. And so in my opinion, and as a person who works in, a space where we make democratic decisions together, it's not easy. When I was part of the co-op, it was not easy. And that's another thing we have to teach our people. We could tell them to sign up and go bring your ideas to this. And it makes sense. It does. But we also have to teach our people to heal from the oppressiveness, the capitalist oppression they've been dealing with, because then they bring that and then they start forgetting the principles of the co-op, and then it becomes a traumatic space too. So then you could add more trauma, and then there's no real support. And so we have to make sure that we actually have those structures in place. And I don't think that we are there. And I think that when we talk about, what is community reinvestment? I can't tell you. I am one person. Yes, I've lived in East Harlem for 39 years, but I can't tell you what all this money should go to. I'm just one out of thousands of people. We have the largest population of public housing in my community. The largest. They deserve to get some of that funding. Not that I agree that NYCHA has been good with money, but we needed to talk to people. We needed to have more real community meetings, because there were a lot of meetings taking place in zip codes where the numbers looked like 68% were white and 4.5% were Black in that community. So who were you talking to? I really want to start looking at the sign-in sheets for some of these events that were informing the community and check the zip codes of where all these people were coming from. Because I'm telling you, they're not coming from Jefferson houses. They're not coming from Carver houses. They're not coming from Washington. They're not coming from over this side of town. And it's really unfortunate, because then our legacy market are also getting fucked in that way too. The people who may want to get up there, we have a lot of, unfortunately, also Black capitalists that are here trying to take away from our legacy market people. And it's a real thing. So we're not ready for legalization. in my opinion. And we need more true community meetings, participatory. They have what they call, and I've said this, and I'm working on this with Blue Dream Radio folks and some others. You know, we really have to start creating more of, you know, Hector Freedom and I were part of, you know, the rezoning in East Harlem, to getting that information. He was part of the environmental organization. And so they had these meetings. I don't want it like that. I mean, the people will create what that meeting would look like, but we need to get the community's input. And maybe now, because of this crisis, maybe we do it digitally in the way that the census is doing it, because we really need to know from the people, not just the people of color pretending to represent my people, who are the ones who continue to get harmed. I think it was mentioned, Michelle, you mentioned that people are still being harmed and still being arrested for marijuana. I have a video. I was literally just going bicycle riding, and I'm a cop watcher. I'm a trained cop watcher. And even though I'm technically not allowed to get in trouble with the law right now, I was curious, what the fuck is going on? I know these homeless people that are on this block that I was riding the bike down. And so I felt like these were cops fucking with them because they're outside, because I do know that NYPD is also targeting people if they're outside, but homeless people don't got nowhere to go right now. But anyway, so this man, you know, I'm trying to find out what's happening. Someone says, oh, he doesn't speak English. He needs someone to speak Spanish to him. You speak Spanish? And I was like, yeah. And then, you know, of course, the cop is telling me to mind my business. I'm saying, you're not allowed to talk to him. You don't even speak his language. Did you tell him what you were pulling him over for? Eventually, he tells me he stopped him because he was smoking weed. So old man, and forgive me, like an older man, like 60 years old. This was the day before yesterday.
Finding his business, man.
A joint. And he was getting harassed, and they looked it up. He got a warrant. I was like, oh, so what are you going to do? You're going to take him in and put him in jail now? When we're trying to get people out of jail?
In the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, they want to put more people in jail, harassed. Why would you stop him and do that? That's like adding more trauma. And then you're not keeping your distance, also social distancing, because they were all in his face. So it's just like we weren't ready. And I think the universe knows that we weren't ready, because our people are still getting screwed in many ways. Like you mentioned, there's now considered the essential market, and there's people in jail for it. There's people in jail for a lot of things they shouldn't be in jail for, not just cannabis, because that's another thing. It's larger than cannabis, especially when we talk about expungement. Like, it's important, yes, but it's so much bigger than that, because as we all know, you know, the convictions hurt us. They hurt us when it comes to housing and all these things. And so, like, right now, you know, something I have questions for some of the other advocates, and we're trying to get people out of jail, and that's important, but where are they going to go? If people are still being harassed in the street just for smoking marijuana and can't be in shit, where are we going to put them? And, you know, with the revenue that comes in from marijuana, we could actually have low income housing, public land use. We could have where the people actually own nature land. We give them training programs on how to do that, implement these programs on public land, teach them how to be a worker co-op. That money can go to that, and educate them on healing and working together, because on top of learning how to write a business plan, one of the most important things we need, because we've always been taught to work against each other and being oppressed, and people don't know what it's like to work in a democratic decision-making model. They say in theory they love it, but try practicing that if you come from an area that you've been oppressed for so long. Getting out that mindset, you need serious support, not just saying that the support is there and then when you reach out, it is not. Because in my experience, I haven't had no support, and it has bring additional trauma. So we need to really do this the right way. We have the structure, we have the frame, but we really need to practice what we preach.
And I have a question for you. You, Raybelin, and Michelle have all mentioned the word expungement. For those folks who don't know what that means, and you're wearing the National Expungement Week shirt from last year, can you quickly talk to us, and if you can, in 30 seconds, what does that mean, and why is that important in this conversation around legalization?
Should I let the lawyer answer? I mean, I could answer, but I don't mind if Michelle takes that on.
All right, Michelle, you're on. 30 seconds. Go.
So in New York State, is not expungement. You can have your case or cases sealed. If you do not have convictions that are violent or sex-related convictions, federal or out-of-state convictions, and you can't have more than 3 arrests and convictions, and they have to be older than 10 years. Now, for persons who are citizens, those case sealings are, are beneficial. However, for your persons that are legal permanent residents that don't have status in this country, is very problematic because remember, immigration is federal. So if you are charged with even possession of marijuana and it's prior to 2019, you still have to provide that information as a part of your naturalization, that certificate of disposition. For most people, even with LPRs, that's problematic. So it's very important for LPRs or persons that don't have status, please be, clear that you have to consult with an immigration attorney. Just because, someone says, well, you can get it, sealed, you can get it dismissed, it becomes a violation, it's destroyed. For those that are facing, that are LPRs that are currently in immigration court, that becomes problematic because even with that possession, it's still on federally, it really, allows you to be either placed in removal or deportation.
Thanks, Michelle.
So for our immigrant, community, it's very important that do not take a plea, do not agree to take a plea without consulting an immigration attorney. Know what that violation means. Even in immigration court is federal. It's more conservative. It's more, stringent. It is by the code, and they're going to follow the code in regards to whether it's a crime of moral turpitude, even possession under, and it's still under. If it's under the CSA, the federal court is going to say you are in violation of the CIA because it's still federal.
Indeed.
And it's not descheduled.
Thanks, Michelle. Raybelin, I'm giving you 1 minute and then I'm going to.
Okay, yeah. I just want to say that MRTA has expungement in the bill and it's supposed to happen automatically, which is one of the biggest criminal justice reform aspects of it. And when decriminalization passed last year, which was a whack ass because we want full legalization, it was supposed to be automatic expungement or record sealing for those low-level offenses. But we've discovered that what we learned from decriminalization last year is that our systems was not ready to deal with the caseload. So people literally have to do a lot of legwork. But it was it definitely tested our system to talk about how expungement is going to work once MRTA gets passed. But MRTA does include expungement for citizens, and to underscore what Michelle stated, for people who are only permanent residents and are looking who are immigrants, do not accept an automatic expungement. Work with an immigration lawyer when it does get legalized, because you need to have whatever happened with your record always to be on record, so in your application process for your future citizenship or for your future residency.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So this is a hot topic.
About the expungement week. So everything was mentioned, and also we were supposed to see what that would look like this coming August, what the automatic expungements would look like. I don't know what's gonna happen now. Now that this crisis is happening, who knows what that's going to look like. We're going to have to follow that. National Expungement Week, we're beginning our meetings. We're also working with National Bailout, starting a little earlier, which is an organization that focuses getting women, women of color, Black women specifically, out of prison and around the states. And so it's starting a little early, especially because of the crisis. But yeah, that was my point, just that it's not, we're going to have to see what happens with automatic. And it doesn't really help because nothing also in technology is really gone. There's something around there. It's a paper trail. And, and people who are undocumented have to be very careful, not only for expungement, but also with marijuana. We learned that it's even dangerous for you to take a picture with it. Like, you can't take a picture, you can't sign that book in the dispensaries, and so it's a lot of things we have to be careful. And so when we talk about legalization, we want to make sure we do it the right way. The MRTA represented that, and that's why too, we had some strong people, some strong leaders like Liz Cougar and People Strokes, who were like, if this is not the way it looks like, then we're not voting for it. And so we gotta, as much as I'm not a big fan of politics, I have to give them that recognition to those women because they're dealing with a lot, especially with COVID.
Awesome. So, Michelle, I'm gonna give you some time towards the end so we could just keep moving on this piece. So we have Audrey Funk here, and I wanted Audrey to talk a little bit about the perspective from being someone from Mexico, from Puebla, Mexico. You've toured all over Latin America. Talk to us first about you. So how do people know you? How can they find you? That's like a little 1-minute intro to who you are.
Yeah, hello girls. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So, yeah, my name is Audrey Funk. I'm from Mexico, Puebla, and I'm a stepdaughter of the Bronx now. So I love the Bronx. It's my new home. And well, I'm an artist, but also I have a degree in philosophy, and also I have a specialization in politics. But I just like advocate myself and my life to music, right? So I'm a rapper, I'm a singer, but also my music is like has a lot of like protest on it. I love to talk about feminism in Latin America and all around the world, and how this system affects you as a woman of color, now as a migrant, as an immigrant here in the United States. And I love to talk about this kind of subjects in not only in my songs, but also in my concerts, where the people can listen in another space about this information.
Awesome. So talk to us about legalization in Mexico. So is it legal in Mexico? Is it as easy, as simple as we like to think it is?
Nah. No. First of all, in Mexico, we have this big, huge, enormous problem, like the narco traffic over there is huge. And it's it's the first social pandemic for us, narco traffic. It's been so hard. And legalization of marijuana is being a little bit, slow because of that. Like, we know, like, narco, they don't make money through the marijuana, being honest. They make money through cocaine, methamphetamines, all that things. But marijuana, as I don't remember who said it, but it's in the chart, right? So it is illegal, so you can make some money through there. Also, Mexico has a very good earth quality that you can plant a bunch of land of marijuana, and also amapola. So it's a very long way, but in Mexico it's not been always illegal. Like, in Mexican Revolution, actually, this very, very, very famous song that everybody knows as a Mexican culture is like La Cucaracha, la cucaracha, na 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 na. So, okay, that was invented in the times of the revolution in Mexico, and they used to talk about how La Cucaracha smoked marijuana, right? so they change a little bit the lyrics because they say la cucaracha ya no quiere caminar porque no tiene, porque le falta marihuana que fumar, right? So that's why this lyric came because in the revolution, the soldiers, they smoke marijuana to, you know, to calm the hungerness, the ache, you know, if they have any pain on their bodies. But then of course the consciousness start to blow up, and then the Mexican government say, like, you know what, yeah, it was used for war times, but now we don't want that. So the marijuana became illegal, and until now it's illegal. And we have some permits over there that are very sorry for the word, but they are stupid. Like for example, like it's okay if you have some disease that you can treat with THC or with marijuana or do, but you cannot plant because it's illegal. But you also cannot buy anywhere because it's illegal. So, okay, where is the sense? Like, if you cannot plant your own flower, your own marijuana, then how can you treat yourself with this kind of alternative medicine? So, of course, you can go to the court to ask for some permissions, permits, yeah, but it's very long. Like the first one who has those permits was, I think, 5 or 8 persons, like 2 years ago. And we are a country of millions of people. I think Mexico is 100 and something million of people in Mexico, and only 8 person, a whole that bunch of people who consume marijuana has that permit to grow their own marijuana. So it's a very long way. Also, I think it's important, like in my case, I don't do this activism as my colleagues here. Like, they are doing the activism in the community very strong. They are attorneys, they have a lot of information. But like for me, in my side of my job, I think activism is a very important, and then I can communicate to the community that doesn't like to go to those kind of, I don't know, to meetings because they don't feel familiarized with the thing, but they like music. I can do this politic act to do music in front of a lot of people that maybe they don't think they are politics. They are politic beings, but they are. So they can receive this kind of information, like, hey, marijuana is not that is not bad, you know. Marijuana is important. Marijuana has a long history. And another thing, as a Mexican, we have to learn how to talk this without a taboo, you know, because in our societies as Mexicans, even here in our communities here, even if we are not in our countries, if we talk with our abuelas or padres y madres, or maybe some friends, if we are talking openly as being a marijuana consumer, or we are like pro marijuana, they are like, oh my God, no, you cannot talk about this, because, like, you know, I think, like, take out these kind of feelings about being pro cannabis in every way. You have to talk very straight, like, you know, I'm a consumer. What else? If you are like, if you don't can talk about this, it's because you have a taboo in yourself. So you have to take all that chains, because those are chains, those are colonization into your pineal gland, you know. So it is not important. So that is my work. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That was great. So talk to us a little bit more about you know, Mexico, people think of it, in my mind, right, of like what they see in telenovelas, what they see on Univision. How does cannabis impact race and class and colorism in Mexico?
Well, you know, like now, okay, in Mexico, all people from the hood, they always consume marijuana, since I have memory, and like listened my, you know, my elders' histories. But nowadays, they are like some white chicken, you know, and that they are gentrifying the the marijuana, you know. Now you can, like, as the people say here, like in the hood, you don't have enough money to have your own business. Even if you want to put a taco place or you want to put a chalupa place, you know, it's you need money for that. But also marijuana is the same. And over there in our hoods, a lot of my friends, because I have a lot of friends who are dealers, a bunch of them, they are in prisons. They they are being convicted, or now they are in jail. So it's the same. But of course, if there is a white Mexican guy or white Mexican woman who sells marijuana and wants to look very cool and very fancy, and you know, he opens like, oh, this is the kind of marijuana, and put a beautiful envelope, they don't do anything. Plus, of course, I don't know how to say this in English, but over there we have chequeo de rutina. I think like
checkpoints, or like checkpoints.
No, it's like it's not a background check. It's like for example, you go on the streets, and if the police say like, hey, shh, you
Mm-hmm.
you look so something weird, so we're gonna yeah, stop and freeze checkpoint.
Oh, they stop and frisk, like racial
Yeah. So
profiling.
in Mexico, it's very common. Of course, if I go to this down to the street and I'm walking, of course, me and myself, Audrey Funk, full of tattoos. I have dreadlocks. I don't dress like a fancy white chicken. So of course, police, they're gonna say like, can I see your purse? Let me check your. It's a chequeo de rutina, right? Mm-hmm. So of course, white people doesn't like suffer like that. If they look like fancy and they go to with a car full of marijuana, they're not gonna be stopped. It's like, oh, this guy is a very like important guy because maybe he's white, and they have cars. So it's the same. I think it's the same colorism. The people over there in Latin America, they say, oh, no, in Latin America there is not racism, there is classism. Of course there is classism, but the racism in Mexico is super, super strong. And I think all Latin America, because of colonization. And nowadays we have that. Like for me, like being this color in Mexico, like at this point, you're not going to have a good job. Maybe you don't have the same opportunities. Some people, if you go into a party, they're going to say, can you bring me a drink, please? So, it's like, it's hard, and it's getting harder if you come from if you're indigenous, if you don't speak properly Spanish because only you speak your language. If you are Black Mexican, like Afro Mexicans, sometimes they get confused and they think they are from Honduras, and they send Afro Mexican to Honduras and other places from Central America, because this year is the first year who they gonna count Afro Mexicans in the census. This year, like, is the first year, so it's a lot of ignorance in our system, but also a lot of things that they don't like to talk about, like these kind of things, like colorism, racism, and all that.
Awesome, thank you, Audrey. So do you want to add anything else before we move on?
Just like, if you want to follow me on my Instagram and all things, Spotify, please. On this time of pandemic, my job is canceled like 100%. I lose a lot of things. I lose a tour in Europe. I lose a tour in Mexico. I lose a lot of dates here. So if you can put play in any of my platforms, that could be very helpful, because being an independent artist is very hard nowadays. So if you can follow me, I'm Audrey Funk in every single place and every single platform, and I really appreciate it. Even if you don't speak Spanish, you will enjoy it.
The music's amazing, absolutely. And Audrey she brings that energy, so she lights it up. All right, so we're coming to a close, and I know that there were some things that folks want to talk a little bit more about. We already spoke about one big part, which people oftentimes overlook, and I'm just asking folks to stay on with us just for a little bit longer. We're almost, we started a little late, so we're trying to make up a little bit of the time. We spoke about immigration, right? And so Michelle spoke about this, and Raybelin spoke about this, about how, we're talking about it simply from a place of privilege, right? Where we don't have to worry about immigration being an issue for ourselves. But as it relates to expungement, whether it's immigration or just regular folks, period, expungement is super important as well, because if I have a record, for example, and this is something that I learned from the folks on this panel, I can get kicked out of NYCHA housing. I could get kicked out of public housing. I may not have access to the same government benefits as well, because I have something on my record. So if I could have, I forgot who, I think it was Michelle, who I cut you off. If you could talk briefly about expungement a little bit more, and why it's significant, why we need to fight, if we're fighting for equity, how we can do that.
All right. Expungement is important because like other jurisdictions, they are going to require, one of the requirements is that you not have any prior convictions. That's number one. Number two, in regards to impact, litigation in regards to cannabis, those that live in federal housing like NYCHA, simple possession is grounds for them to be expelled or evicted from NYCHA. That's number one. So when we talk about how does social equity look in terms of how do we, utilize the tax revenues? Well, your federal government last year alone made $4.6 billion in cannabis sales revenue. That's number one. Why can't that money be used to go back into criminalized communities? That's number two. Number three, when you talk in regards to, revenue, why not take money from the application fees as well as the licensing fees and make that a part of social equity and reinvest that money back into our criminalized communities? There's a lot of different mechanisms that you can use. Monies can come from application licensing fees, federal tax sale revenues of cannabis to go back into these criminalized communities. But the most important thing is persons that are living in federal housing, which are us, Black and Latino, especially in the 5 boroughs, how they are mostly impacted by not only the arrests and convictions, but the fact that even living in NYCHA housing, they can't apply for their medical marijuana cards because you can't use Medicaid. You can't go into dispensaries.
For sure.
So that's another issue. And I think we need to talk a lot more because we're being locked up and also being locked out. And as Arch talked about, whitewashing, well, the industry has been whitewashed already.
Yeah.
And I think, with this panel and other panels that's going on throughout the 5 boroughs, there needs to be more representation and ownership and inclusion of Black and Latino people. And that's what I want to see.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Raybelin, Pilar, Audrey, and Michelle, I'll go around the horn for a second. I'll start with you, Raybelin. Can you tell us one thing that our participants can do to support the movement for cannabis or marijuana legalization?
Well, I'll say 2 things. One, they should go to the Start Smart New York website and sign up to receive the newsletters and information and see all the aspects of what we're fighting for in MRTA that specifically talks about what does community investment look like, how we're fighting for criminal justice reform. So definitely get on and get involved in the work that we're doing, because even though session ended, we're going to be doing more trainings and more work to do public awareness that we have a people's bill for marijuana legalization, and they should join the effort so that next session we get to legalize marijuana on our terms, not on Cuomo's terms. So get on Start Smart New York, get on the listserv, find out what's happening. We have a lot of work groups. I head the cooperative work group. Pilar heads the community reinvestment work group. You can join. So whatever work group you want to join in, there's a bunch of work groups: criminal justice reform, medical reform, everything. There's a lot. So get involved in the work. Second, I am, as part of Green Worker Cooperatives, we're doing a virtual training on March 21st, the day after 420, on very specifically an info session about how Green Worker is going to be supporting people who want to start a marijuana cooperative. And so you be Eli Northrup from Bronx Defenders. He and I are going to be, I'm going to be talking about cooperatives in the MRTA, and Eli's going to be talking about criminal justice reform and answer all the questions, because Eli is one of the lead organizers for the defenders, the criminal justice reform. So he's going to be able to directly answer questions on what would legalization look like for your criminal record. So, you know, tune in on 421. I will send you the link when we have it set up. It's going to be a virtual meeting like this one, but we'll be much more interactive. People can ask questions directly to us and we'll be able to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you, Evelyn. Pilar, as you're digging your eyes, sorry. What's one thing that folks can do to help support the movement for cannabis legalization?
I think, you know, everything that Raven mentioned, definitely sign up, you know, reach out to me if you have questions, if you want to, like, we can't door knock right now. So, you know, I'm actively trying to figure out how we do get this word out digitally, especially around expungement, because again, it's actually like so much more than cannabis, you know, right? Yes, cannabis is an important factor right now. But I think that, you know, it's all intersected when they talk about housing. We talk about the people who are still in prison right now for marijuana during this crisis. And not only for marijuana, like elderlies who are sick, people who are just there for nonviolent crimes. Like, you know, there are people there who are still waiting for their court date, you know, and now everything's been pushed back. Like, you know, we're also working on, when I say we, National Expungement Week, we're working on some more meetings before Expungement Week. So stay tuned for that, because it's going to be really important for us to show support to one another, but like everything is happening and we're being harmed even more now. And if you think about what the New York State budget that just passed is going to create more harmful barriers. And so I would say really get involved, talk to one of us to see how you could do that, because it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. I cannot say this enough, you know, I'm mentally exhausted. As much as I want to profit in this industry, I want to make sure that my peoples are good. And right now with this crisis, they're not good. They weren't good before, and now we're even worse. And, you know, if we don't start really taking care of one another and really coming together and paying attention, and, you know, I'm not trying to throw shade at the essential workers, but I think people are forgetting too the advocates who are there trying to push the legislators to cancel rent, to pass. We were trying to get marijuana passed in the right way. They rolled back bail. They rolled back bail reform. This is bad for us. And now, like, we see that everybody is still hyper enforcement going on, and even more because of the crisis. So all I would say really is help out, get involved. And it's beyond cannabis, and we really need to start looking at it like that too, because it's a war on Black and brown people, and we know this, but everyone is doing different things, and instead we need to be more united. So just like support is needed in every level. And so I would say get involved in the Housing Justice Coalition, Housing Justice for All, the Rent Justice Coalition, the Start Smart Coalition, you know, the Right to Counsel Coalition. And these are housing, but it's important. I would tell you, Communities Unite for Police Reform. I forgot the group that is leading the trying to get elders out of prison. Like, look to your defenders, like Bronx Defenders Services. Eli is he's got a lot of resources. Or if you don't know him, just reach out to us, because right now it's getting more aggressive, and, you know, I don't think it is going to get better, and we're going to have to figure out ways to make sure that our communities are prioritized. Sorry, that was long.
Right. Thanks, Pilar. All right. Audrey, what are ways in which you think that folks can support the movement for cannabis legislation?
I think as I say, like politics is everywhere, right? Not only in activism. Like when you do something like that matters with different things, you are activated something. So if you can support it through your art, music, dance, I don't know, if you paint, go and do that. It's another form to inform the people. So that is important. Like as I always say, like I'm a philosopher in the paper, right? And my degree says that. But the scholar thing is very, like, polite, and you have to use like words very beautiful and blah blah blah. But I think it's not the only way to do philosophy. You can do it from another things. So it's the same with these kind of issues. Philosophy, politics are in every single thing you are doing. So if you're doing advocating with something, you are giving like politic sense to that. So you can do whatever you think to be in touch with the legalization of marijuana, and also educate yourself. Education is power, and know your thing is power. If you are a consumer, you have to be a real, like, ¿cómo se dice? Educated. Yeah, you have to be really educated. So that is important to like in the path of the legalization. So yeah, that is my only thing.
Thank you, Ajin. Hang on for one more minute. And Michelle, let us know, in your perspective, what actions can they take to support the movement for cannabis legalization?
Right. Get involved, become proactive, just immerse into the industry, the science, the business aspect of the industry. Let your vote be your power. Go to, join normal, other, community-based organizations. Do smoke the vote. Go online to find out which, the senators that are supporting, legislation or are against it. Just recently, 3 a.m., they just rolled back the bail reform. You need to know who those senators are. You need to let your vote speak for itself, and we need to be involved. And collectively, as Black and Latino people, we need to understand the power that we have in our own communities in regards to, financing our businesses, coming together in micro businesses and co-op businesses, and really, 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 taking, our power back, and not asking, taking a chair at the table in regards to ownership and visibility in this industry.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. So before we head out, Audrey, can I ask you to spit a little rhyme or something for our folks?
Oh, wow. That was so, like, unexpected. Oh, give me 1 second. Oh, here. Hi, hello, yes. So, yeah, why not? But this is in Spanish, so
It's okay.
Ok, cool. Dice, en ríos de violencia la carne parece de piedra, la justicia no se asoma ni crea, y no creas que hay esperanza de que por tu mano se nivele la balanza, tu majadería ya no alcanza, sumisión no pido, manifestarme con gritos de confianza, mi garganta no se cansa, no me representas con tu política, tus leyes y tu analítica, no me representas, somos los nadie en tu estadística. A través del arte resistimos, autogestión y resistimos. La gente que con colores, palabras, sonido que estalla te vuelve a la vida.
Yay! Thank you, Audrey. And thank you, folks, for staying with us. We went over a bit, but this was super informative. Just like our folks have said, get involved. There's a place for everyone. So whatever it is, whatever your interest is, Google it, find it. Now is the time. Everyone's online trying to manage through COVID-19. So please do that. If you have the ability to do so, the privilege to do so, go out and vote too. Like there are some good, this is politics, as Pilar says, but I see this from a harm reduction perspective. What's the best way in order for you to be able to just reduce some of the fuckery that's happening right now? And then find folks in your neighborhood that you can run, that you can support, because we need to have more folks like us on there, really just advocating. The last thing is, please remember folks like Audrey. She is our artivist, combination of activist and artist. Support her in this time right now. Folks we're social distancing, we're not seeing each other, so there's ways you can support all the folks who are here. Follow them on their social media. If they Audrey, can you just remind us again how folks can find you on the interwebs? Go right ahead.
Yeah, Audrey Funk, AUDRYFUNK, everywhere, like Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music, Claro Music, everywhere.
Awesome. Raybelin, how can people find you?
Oh, I am my first name. It's unique. Just put up Raybelin anywhere. Raybelin, Facebook, Twitter, even old school AOL.
You took it to AOL. Thanks, Raybelin. And Pilar, how can folks find you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Pilars, PILARS _Orenda, ORENDA. And on Facebook, T Pilar de Jesus. I don't really do the Twitter thing, so I'm not on there. And yeah. Awesome. Or you can email me at P as in Pilar, de Jesus, DEJESUS @takerootjustice.org.
Thank you. And you can find us, you can follow us at Blue Dream Radio _ on Instagram, on Facebook. Find us on our podcasts. Our friend Michelle Fields, you can find her at the Mary Jane Consulting Group. She had to drop off early, but folks, if you're interested, you could always send us a message on Instagram and we can connect you to all of our wonderful panelists. So thank you so much for your time. Everyone stay well, wash your hands, listen to good music, create. You are all artists. Being an artist is a revolutionary act. So whether you have a beautiful voice and skills like Audrey, or your art is organizing, this is the time to do it. So peace out, folks. Thank you.